think I've hit the record button again. Are we recording?
Yes.
All right. Well, good deal.
Maybe.
Well, we are back for another episode of P2 Transition or Post-Secondary Transition. I am one of the hosts. My name is Patrick Cadigan. Thanks for coming back. Who is my co-host?
This is Megan Smallwood, and I have returned for more.
Well, good deal. All right. So I am super excited about today's discussion because we're actually going to be doing an interview for a family. Do you want to give a little bit of a background about where this came from?
Oh, well, we're lucky enough to have a wonderful family that I've been working with for a few years, the Nirschls. Their son is preparing to exit from the school system this year, and they've done a lot of hard work behind the scenes to prepare for this. So they're going to share their experience a little bit about where they started and how they've gotten to where they are now.
And this is cool because we've been talking about this for a while. Like we've been
Right.
building up to this, and this is really something that we wanted to do. But before we get into our interview, why don't let's talk about post-secondary transition and what does that mean? Like if we were to
Right.
define it, what is it?
Because there's so many transitions during the school time. So post-secondary transition specifically focuses between ages of 14 through 21. And it's really helping to answer that question, what do you want for your child after they leave school? Which is a loaded question, we know. But we here with this podcast are looking to help answer that question a bit by asking parents to think long-term, their milestones, do the research, resources, goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, how do we define long term? Like, how do we define long term? I would say, what do you want your child to be doing after the school bus stops coming? You know, which is different for everybody. It is a completely individualized experience. And along with that individuality can come some loneliness and in some cases a sense of isolation. But there are other families who are going through this. So probably at the same time you are.
Exactly. You're not alone in this. And along the journey, we're hoping to focus on the milestones. And some of those are built around time frames, and in other cases, it helps determine them, and figure out what are those milestones to talk about. So using your child's school experiences to help with doing the research, using the resources you have at your disposal, including that school transition specialist and other teachers, is vital. There's a lot of information. There's a lot to consider. You don't want to be alone in this process. And in many cases, the answers won't immediately present themselves. It's going to be a lot of give and take. There's going to be things you'll do that you won't have that desired outcome, unfortunately. And trying to do it all at once can feel consuming. So with this podcast, we're hoping to help clear away some of that fog through the journey.
Fantastic. Well, then I would say, without further ado, let's go ahead and get together with our family.
I am Nick Nirschl, and
I'm Remy Nirschl, and we have a son who is 20 years old. His name is Rich, and he goes to a public day school.
And so when he was about a year old, he seemed to be doing pretty well, maturing normally. And about that time, Remy seemed to start noticing some abnormalities, and the doctor tended to downplay it and didn't really.
He told me, "Oh, we'll just wait and see."
So he was a little over a year old,
3-year-old.
and he started to have some odd behaviors and things, and the doctor was like, well, it's just normal.
He's a boy. Boys
Yeah.
are late talk. But he was showing symptoms because I was a social worker working in a day program rehabilitation for traumatic brain injury. And there was a section in the building for early development children. And I used to see them walk around and they would have behaviors like flapping hands, nonverbal. And he was showing those same symptoms and I was getting really nervous. And so I went to the doctor and say, look, this is what he's exhibiting. And he just said, well, you know, you work at a rehab, you're just projecting, just wait and see. And I said, what do you mean by at what age are you going to review this? And he said, oh, around 5 years old is when we will figure this out. And so we had to just go, we had an HMO, and this was in the state of California, by the way. And we had to just pay out of pocket, go in debt, get a diagnosis. And in the state of California, once you get a diagnosis, we contacted regional center. I knew to do that because I was a social worker.
Right.
And so, we waited for just a few months compared to here, which you have to wait a long time. And then we got services. We got speech. They were going to hook us up to an early childhood development. But at that time, Nick got a job in Maryland. And so we had to pick up everything and just start fresh again at the age of 2. It was the same year. My rude awakening was that, oh my gosh, Maryland is different from California. We had to wait for service.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went to public school. He's
Mm-hmm.
been there for all this time. He's got great teachers throughout. I think we were blessed to have had some great teachers along the way. Of course, there was tension back and forth, but I think it's the collaboration of that brought some really good, goals and services for him. And now we're at this point.
And how long was he at the separate day school? Did he go right into it when he started his schooling?
No. He started off in a
Inclusion.
separate school that was sort of an inclusion program that was that had kind of how did that work? It was
It was at Howard County Public School, but they have the the special program,
Like the academic life skills programs.
Yeah.
They have the combination is, I think it was called Mink EL, Mink P, which is included the sort of like the ABA program.
Right. Yep.
Right. And they would try to include him in various classes throughout the day.
And we also had, they are also allowed to pay for like 15 hours of ABA intensive therapy. And then once he went into, that was preschool, once he went into kindergarten up to now present, it was all special ed without the in-home service.
Right. So that a separate day program.
What age did they finally identify your son with autism? Like, when did you get the official diagnosis?
That was 18 months. So we had gone to a separate person from UCLA who did the diagnosis. So, I mean, there was a lot of early on, we were trying to get some, go through the regular doctor. And we did finally get him to be seen by a sort of autism specialist who said, yeah, he probably has autism, but we'll wait until he's 5. That was the one. That's when we said we need to get him diagnosed and
pay out of pocket.
Yeah.
And first they ruled out hearing if he
Yeah.
was deaf because he wasn't responding to his name. So they ruled that out. Once the psychologist did a thorough evaluation, she diagnosed him with autism, the age of 2.
Yeah. And it was funny because once we started getting those services, they were like, oh, it's so important that they get early intensive therapy. And had we just listened to the doctor, we wouldn't have yet gotten that.
Well, just to step back, this was back in 2002. 4.
Well, I guess it was 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
Basically a long 20 years ago.
The autism rates were like 1 out of 150. And now it's 1 out of 44, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people are now more aware.
Right.
And pediatricians are more, are looking into it now.
Right.
And we'll work with parents and if parents have concerns, they will listen, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we were just at the cusp of when it was, people were starting to realize it was a real issue and there was starting to be more awareness of it, but we hadn't quite gotten to the point where we are now.
So, as we fast forward now to where your son is at right now, what does a school day look like for him?
Well, so he has to wake up real early in the morning at 6:30 to get him bed and ready to go with the bus picks him up at 7:15, which is really early for him. So that's been a challenge. And from the school, once he gets there, they have the assembly. They do, from what I understand, some vocational and life skills. They go out to the community. Is it once or twice a week?
Hoping to get back to twice.
Yeah. So from there, he comes home around 2:45. And then I get him ready because he's not done yet. Let him just do what he needs to do to rest. And by 3:00, his therapist comes.
We have an ABA therapist.
Yeah, it's funded through our health insurance. And from 3 to 6, he's there with him doing life skills or whatever program that is being implemented that's prepared by the BCBA. And then his day is done after that. So that's his routine, Monday through Friday.
So a very functional,
yes,
vocational, life skills driven day.
And he's in a classroom with 4 other children. So it's a very small class size with, I don't know what the ratio is, but I think it's close to 1-to-1.
So I was going to say, thinking back when that diagnosis was received and you were planning the next steps, did it ever cross your mind about long-term planning? What's his life going to look like after school?
Yes.
Well, yeah. So initially there's the shock, right? And you start to wonder if start to ask those questions. I think within a year or two of that kind of got in my mind, okay, we'll deal with that when we get to it. Let's just see what we can get him to. I still had hope that at some point he'd be able to be independent at some point in his life.
As for me, that was constantly in my mind every single day. And even when he was young, what's his life going to be? And so anxiety over that really pushed me, and maybe a little bit too hard on the teachers to get the goals right and to make sure that they're meeting the goals, because I always had that end in mind, like wanted him to be at the point where he is self-functioning, hopefully diploma. But then along the way, as we were, working towards those goals, I was noticing maybe that what I wanted for him at the end starts changing. Like it depends upon how he's progressing. And I had to step back and say, okay, I just gotta take a deep breath and just let's go do next thing. It's just get him to the point of what he could do now. I think that intensity of where I wanted him to be, it was so intense that it was, I just had to let it go and just focus on the present moment. Where is he now? Where he can move.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we're kind of the opposite in how we approach life. I mean, I think that happens a lot with married couples as you're attracted to. And so I've always been I don't spend time regretting, and I kind of deal with now, but I don't plan for the future. Remy in school, she would be, if an assignment was given to her that was due 6 weeks from now, she needed to do it tonight. And I'd wait until like a couple weeks before it's due. And then my daughter would wait until the night before it's due. But that's how her approach to how to deal with Richie has always been like, we need to plan this, we need to get it going.
And I think he kind of taught me along the way to just relax and follow his lead. And there are moments when he's just so happy, he's just happy and smiling. And so
that's what you want for your child. You want to see that.
That's the goal. A lot of people's goal is to just be happy, right? He's already there. Already there. And I just had to
and I see from because I know you, and I see from my side that you recognize that what makes him happy, and as you're planning for the future, that's what you're striving for. And I think you're on a great path. But going back to that, you were kind of leading me at that next question about planning for that post-secondary world. and how you like to be paired. Around what age did you start doing a little of that research and starting to recognize, like, okay, I really need to see what I need to do to get us prepared for 21?
At 14 years old, it was in the back of my mind because I've been going to a lot of the informational meetings since we came here to Maryland. So as soon as he started school, I've been going to the conferences, and right away they said, just keep that in the back of your mind about transition. One of the presenters said, start at the age of 14 to just kind of explore more. And so at the age of 14 is when I did really attend more of the meetings that were provided by the school, by the local Howard County Autism Society, and I would just keep notes. And then I met several parents along the way with children that were transitioning, and I would talk to them, and they said it took them about 3 years and to go to as many of the transition meetings to really get it by the end of to really understand what was happening, because the resources, it's so overwhelming, it's so confusing that it took them year after year after year to finally understand it. So that's what a lot of the parents I've talked to have recommended to me, is to towards the age of 14, 15, and 16, try to go to those meetings year after year after year. And then at 16, that's when you start doing your research, making a plan. 17 is when you start implementing the plan, and 18 is when you execute. And so I remember that just by talking to parents, going to those informational conferences and everything. I just remember that, and I just kept that in my notes, and that's what I did.
Great setup. I love it.
It was.
Hey, Remy, I do have one question for you. So what was the most useful, which is to say, did you find those transition meetings useful, or did you find talking to other parents and families who were going through the process more useful for you?
In the beginning, it was the parents. Actually, the parents throughout. Parents, connecting with them, connecting to groups, connecting to the Facebook groups. Like the Howard County Autism Society has a group. One of the parents, her name is Bernadette, sorry. She created a Maryland Transition
Facebook group.
Autism Facebook group. So I went into that one. We were both in that one. And I know there's another group called Self-Direction Book. I'm in that one. I mean, there are a lot of information out there in the internet. So connecting with parents is what's vital.
Yes.
But also the webinars, the conferences were really good too, especially the SSI one. That was really good, because SSI can be very, very overwhelming, and there's so much information.
When you say SSI, what is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a Social Security Supplementary Income.
So the way I understand it is, so there's kind of two kinds of Social Security, right? There's the SSI and there's the SSDI. SSI is for people who have never really paid into it. So a lot of the children with disabilities, our son in particular, were able to take advantage of. Once they turn 18. They can get a monthly income to basically help them pay for living expenses.
But you have to qualify for that.
So there's a process to apply for it. We definitely took advantage of some of those information sessions to figure out how to put in the application.
Yeah, it's really confusing. DDA website, the Developmental Disability website. There's so much information, and you
can go down a rabbit hole with that.
Yeah, I'm still trying to kind of go through it.
I mean, the interesting thing was, like, once we got the application in for Rich, it was really very quick. It happened right during the pandemic. And we ended up doing a phone call meeting with the person. Within a month or two, he was qualified and he was already receiving service or receiving benefits.
Yeah, and I think we were kind of, he was lucky in that we happened to work with an SSI representative who was really just thoughtful and wanted to work with us, because I've heard stories from other parents that it took them months to get their child receiving SSI. And so he was lucky. We were lucky to have been paired up with somebody who helped us through the process. And it also helped because the Autism Society had a conference. They have a yearly conference with an SSI guru,
Michael Dalto.
And he was helpful because we talked to him privately too for tips that he can help us. And he gave us some really good information.
Yeah, he really laid it out exactly what you have to say and how you do the application.
I need to point out to parents, which is important, is to apply for SSI, don't apply the day they turn 18. Wait until they're 1 month after they turn 18, because if you apply too close to the date of when they just turned 18, parents' income will be assessed, included in determining whether the child qualifies. And if you're making a lot of money, your child will get denied. You have to wait about I would say about a month after they turn 18. So,
and I know the Michael Dalto sessions they did are on the Howard County Autism Society webpage recorded. So they're a great resource.
He was really great. And
yeah. So that was the first part of our podcast series.
Our interview series with our family.
Thank you. Please come back for more. We're going to do another second podcast with them. In the meantime, like and follow the podcast to make sure you're not missing any of our episodes as they come out. And be sure to tell other families about us. And more importantly, send us messages. If there's a topic you want us to discuss or cover, if you have questions, you just need some more insight on, we are happy to cover it as much as we can. So
we have already gotten some feedback, and we're looking forward to incorporating that in later on. So absolutely. All right. Well, I think we're done with part 1.
Awesome.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.